Hello, America. Today's show topics include Supreme Court wins, dementia patients, and profiles in history. So, sit back, buckle up, and hang on because we're just getting started.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
You know what time it is, so sit back and get ready for the Stafford Voice, your dose of conservative in a world of liberal.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, how you doing? I'm your host, Daniel Stafford, and you're listening to the Stafford Voice, where we are conservative in a world of liberal. And look, I want to remind you there are many ways to listen or watch, so wherever you're at, set the channel as a favorite, whatever you have to do so you don't get left behind. Because if for some strange, crazy reason you do miss the show, well, you know what? You can just sit tight. There's no need to panic, none whatsoever, because hey, I got you. In the case you aren't already following on social media, you can find me over on Twitter or Gab at Stafford Voice, or on Grassfire or Facebook or Instagram or any other social site of your choosing, wherever, whenever. Just search for the Stafford Voice and, well, we'll be there. Okay? Now, as we go ahead and get into things, I just want to say thank you so much for all of your patience. You know, last week was kind of rough. You know, with the whole computer crashing twice on us during the show. That in and of itself is one thing. But then to be able to try and make it back onto the show and get the whole rig rebooted, get all of the windows back open, get everything plugged back in, and get everything scheduled so it goes back out to you guys. I will admit, it was extremely frustrating. I know that some of that may have come across. That isn't how we really want to do things here with the show. We're gonna reserve all of that stuff for shows like Alex Jones. They do well with that. We don't. One of the things that, I kind of pride myself on the idea that we've typically been a very, very clean show that, we hope that you could have your kids watching. And over the last couple of weeks, it's really not been that way. I kind of enjoy, getting down and dirty and letting things go. But that's really not so much who I am and what I want this show to be. And last night was a shining example of last week was definitely not something that I would want to write home to anybody about. So I took some time last week to reboot. Now, I'm seeing you guys over in the chat in YouTube, and let me address that here shortly. I see you guys. I see we got Slick from Rebel Road Tactical, who I believe just relaunched rebelroadtactical.com earlier today. So kudos to him. If you haven't done so, please head over to rebelroadtactical.com and check out what he's done and what he's working on. We've got Jessica in there. Jess is in there. She says she's battled tech difficulties plenty. We have. You guys know, as many times as you've watched or listened to the show, we have battled some technical difficulties. John thinks that the Russians hacked the computer. I don't really think that's what it is. You know, I do tend to believe, and I want to believe, that there are some spiritual forces, whatever it is, that are trying to take us down and hold us back. You know, I was over the weekend, and I'm not going to be this guy, but I just want to touch on it for a second. I'm going to consider this flattering. Why so? Because, well, over the weekend I was doing a little bit of research and doing some testing with the computer and kind of doing some stress tests and making sure that the new hardware that I installed, and if you follow along on Instagram, then you already know what I did. The processor, I got it all packed away. Anyway, typically inside your computer, you've got these tiny little processors. They're like 3-inch by 3-inch squares, and they're like maybe 2 inches tall. They're tiny little things. But with the amount of programs and stuff that are running, and the amount of work that we put this computer through to help get all of this out to you is very, very taxing. So far, all of our tests have shown that little tiny fan and cooler just wasn't enough. So we've got inside this computer, we've got this big, huge radiator-looking thing. It's got 2 fans on it that could probably power a small little 4-cylinder. But we've got our fingers crossed that that's going to hold up for us. And, you know, I've done some stress tests over the weekend, and so far so good. Didn't crash on me once. Hopefully I didn't just jinx myself. But anyway, so I took last week as a bit of a reboot. And here's what I'm doing. We were doing some tests. Yes, Slick, I know it's called a heat sink. Some of that stuff is not right there with me. It's okay. I got this big, huge heat sink looking thing. It's got copper tubes. It looks like something out of the space shuttle. Anyway, really cool looking. I was slightly intimidated by it when I had to take the computer back apart and, you know, swap the parts. Anyway, so reboot. We've been doing some testing. No, it's not water cooled. It does have 2 big, huge fans on it. It's got, each fan is what, like, I want to say each fan is like 5 inches big. So there's 2 of them. Anyway, we can geek out about all this stuff at a later time. You want to check it out, go over to the Instagrams and take a look at it. Anyway, let's stay on topic because we got some good stuff to cover. What else? Oh, yes. So here's the thing. We were doing some testing, trying to see where the markets wanted to be. Obviously, you guys that are in the chat room right now prefer YouTube. And I personally I like the YouTube side of things. I like the way the chat is organized. It's very clean. And John, it's a little more, it's about the size of a Volkswagen bus. It is air-cooled, but it's got some fans. I mean, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 fans inside. Anyway, geeking out again. Okay. Nerds. Anyway, we watched that over the weekend. So I did some testing trying to multi-stream from YouTube to Facebook to Twitch, which is a gaming site, but they're slowly opening it up for other streamers to send their content over there. So we tried to get in over there. And I tried very, very hard to be able to stream to Periscope. I don't know what the hell my problem is. I cannot figure it out for the life of me. But all of our testing is saying, quit worrying about all of that, because you're putting too much effort in all of that stuff instead of the one thing that's giving you the best return, and that is YouTube. So we're done streaming to Facebook. We're done trying to get to Twitch. We're done trying to get to Periscope. Maybe eventually, when we save up some money and we get a better platform, or with some better hardware that can do all of the coding and everything for each one instead of relying on a third-party service. Again, let me just reiterate something that Slick just said in the chat, and that is YouTube is the most stable. It really is. It has proven that time and time again that it is the most stable platform. I mean, for Facebook Facebook was stable the entire time. But Twitch is stable as well, but last week it didn't like our signal for some reason, even though we were relying on a third-party service to fix the stream for us to make it quote-unquote Twitch compliant. But anyway. Okay, so that's kind of catching us up on a little bit on a few things. Catches us up on a few things. Now let's get into this. Something that I used to do with the show, and I think you guys liked it, was I kind of had like a quote that set the tone. Now, John, Facebook is a Johnny-come-lately to the streaming world. They're not all there yet. Look, some shows, one of which has borrowed one of my sayings, that I end the show by telling you guys that you guys are more than friends, you guys are family, and I hope that you guys know that. But during some of my research over the weekend, I heard another show use that very same line, and that show has not been around as long as we have and not been using it as long as we have. So I'm going to take that as flattery. Imitation is the highest form of flattery, so it is what it is. So let's venture back a little bit, if you will, into using some quotes to kind of set the tone for the show tonight. Today's is a rather lengthy quote. John, remind me to come back to that later about the USS Fitzgerald. Please remind me to come back to it. No, it was not a KLRN radio show. It was through a different network that I will not name names. I'm not going to name show hosts or anything like that. But, John, I think we need to, instead of bringing it up later, I think we need to talk about this at a different time. So, I'll tell you what, I'm going to contact you tomorrow. I want to talk about the USS Fitzgerald and this ACX Crystal, the container ship. No, it wasn't War Radio. War Radio! No, it wasn't any of that. I want to talk to you about that because I think we're right on the same path with this. There's echoing something you just said, the redundant navigation alarms and collision prevention systems on a Navy destroyer, highly, highly impossible. Not saying that it can't happen, just saying the chance that it could happen is very, very, very minute. But there's a lot of unrest and instability over there in the Middle East region. We're not going to cover it tonight. And like Jessica said, maybe the container vessel made a weird U-turn. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate with it. I know I've got my own ideas. Anyway, I want to get on to the topics of the show, and that is the Supreme Court. We also have, what else do we got coming up later? Oh, yeah, dementia patients that's absolutely sick. Yes, and I think there's some parallels, John. I really do. But anyway, let's go ahead and set the tone with some quotes from a book that I'm reading by Andy Andrews called The Little Things, Why You Really Should Sweat the Small Stuff. Now, I was reading in this book over the weekend, and he's talking about the little things, like taking offense. And I'm kind of scattered with my quotes here, but I think they all kind of flow into one another. He says, more and more often these days, the tail is wagging the dog. One person who claims to have been greatly offended is immediately afforded a media platform that is simply unavailable to hundreds of people who are apparently too boring to offer us anything more than common sense. Perhaps most unsettling of all, however, at least to responsible parents, is an awareness of a dangerous irony awakening in the minds of our children and teenagers. As young people watch adults on television being financially rewarded and becoming famous because of their behavior, our children cannot help but reflect that if they act that way, they would be punished. As you might have noticed, intolerant people are easily offended, and offended people often become very, very angry. The uncomfortable truth is this: angry segments of society, no matter how great their numbers, always collapse, crushing the innocent along with the guilty under the weight of their anger. Taking offense begins a quote-unquote butterfly effect, just like anything else. But on the butterfly, responsible for offense repercussions, those evil wings must be the size of a 747. You can kind of tell why I enjoy reading Andy Andrews. He's got a bit of a humor to him. Then he goes on to say, we can choose to be offended. We can choose not to be offended. It really is that simple. Mature people understand that while they are entitled to their own opinions, they are not entitled to their own facts. Tragically, this is how a majority of otherwise rational and productive people inadvertently yield their leadership to a small group they quietly believe to be idiots, subsequently enabling the idiots to steer everyone into a ditch. An offense taken produces a feeling, only a feeling, a moment of emotional confusion. You can choose how you act, despite how you feel. When you consider the whole attention to feelings issue, do you want to know the worst part of it all? Do you want to know the big, offensive-sounding secret no one wants to stand up and say out loud? It's a lie. Yep, our whole societal focus on feelings as life's most important factor is a dangerous lie. It is a lie that has already greatly damaged the prospects of a generation and threatens to destroy the fabric of our nation. And then he ends it like this. The bottom line is this. When it comes to whether or not you are offended, you are in total control. I'm really enjoying this book. If you want me to drop you a link, hit me up on social media, and I'll give you a link to it. Anyway, it's by Andy Andrews. It's called The Little Things, Why You Really Should Sweat the Small Stuff. I bring this up because earlier today, the Supreme Court came out and defended the First Amendment. Overwhelmingly. I mean, it was unanimous. Yeah, triggered. You know what? Get your triggered hats on, because people are about to get triggered right now. Because, okay, who said what? Justice Samuel Alito, in writing for his opinion for four justices in Mittal versus Tom. This is the Slants case, okay? Let's give the history of the Slants case, shall we? In Mittal, the government refused to register the Slants as a band's trademark on the ground that the name might be seen as demeaning to Asian Americans. Again, now we're onto this whole feeling thing. They go on to say that the trademark office in 2011 said registering the trademark of the Slants, an Asian American rock group, would violate a part of the 1946 Lanham Trademark Act that prohibits registration of a trademark that, quote, may disparage persons, living or dead, institutions, beliefs, or national symbols, or bring them into contempt or disrepute. The office said the name was likely to disparage a significant number of Asian Americans, but founder Simon Tom said the point of the band's name is just the opposite, an attempt to reclaim a slur and use it as a badge of pride. Okay, so now let's get into what was said. What did the Supreme Court say? Again, let's go back to Justice Samuel Alito, who's writing the opinion for four justices. He says, quote, the idea that the government may restrict speech expressing ideas that offend strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. Speech that demeans on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, disability, or any other similar ground is hateful. But the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express, quote, the thought that we hate. Now, Justice Anthony Kennedy, who wrote separately, but also for four justices. Now, only 8 justices ruled in this because Justice Gorsuch had yet to. He didn't hear this particular case, so he was unable to issue his opinion on it. I'm sure that he falls right in line with this. So Justice Kennedy said, a law found to discriminate based on viewpoint is an egregious form of content discrimination which is presumptively unconstitutional. A law that can be directed against speech found offensive to some portion of the public can be turned against minority and dissenting views to the detriment of all. The First Amendment does not entrust that power to the government's benevolence. Instead, our reliance must be on the substantial safeguards of free and open discussion in a democratic society. They made perfectly clear that speech that some view as racially offensive is protected not just against outright prohibition, but also against lesser restrictions. There's more to this than just the whole hate speech thing. Oh, well, I don't like what you say, so you can't say it because it hurts my feelings. That's not how free speech works. You know, it kind of goes hand in hand with what happened over the weekend. And I wrote really, really briefly on it over at the StaffordVoice.com. That there are some free speech hypocrites out there. Like the protesters that stormed the stage of the Shakespeare in the Park thing. Okay, great. You didn't want to watch the play. Why did you go? You don't agree with the portrayal of Trump being Julius Caesar. Okay. So don't go. Don't watch it. Don't give them any attention. That's what they want. But it's art. They have the opportunity to freely express themselves. But if we remember 6 to 8 months ago, when guys like Milo, Ben Shapiro, and Coulter, remember when they were out there getting shut down at college universities because, it was hate speech. And all of these leftist liberals shouted over them and got these universities to not allow them to talk and this and that. They shut things down. Black Lives Matter came in and they protested. We had Trigglypuff coming up and blowing air out of her blowhole. It hurt their feelings. So they caused a disruption. Well, now you're silencing somebody. You did the same thing and you thought it was okay. Now, whether it was a money-making scam for what's her name or not, we'll never know. I mean, she made umpteen $1,000 to cover her $1,000 bail. Anyway, getting slightly off topic with that. So, this is a huge win. This is a huge win. And what this really does is opens an avenue that we really, really, really need to go down. And that is dissecting these documents, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, for God's sakes. We need to dissect these things and really explain that what the reason behind the Bill of Rights is. Is it to protect me from my neighbor? In a roundabout way, but not. The main focus is to protect us. We put that there so the government can't encroach on us. And this goes along with what Slick from Rebel Road Tactical is saying in the chat room. He says, the important thing to remember here is that the First Amendment only restricts the government. It does not limit we the people. We are not required by the First Amendment to accept or tolerate offensive speech. But if you don't like it, don't listen to it. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. You have the choice. You have the choice to get offended by it just as much as you have the choice not to. You can just let it be water on a duck's back. Just let it roll, man. Just let it go. I'm not being the flower hippie guy here, man. I'm just saying, let it go. We've got bigger things to worry about. Like, who's going to throw the first pitch out tomorrow night? Bigger things than that, okay? There are so many attacks being thrown at us. We have so many attacks. We have to choose our battles. But this one is a win. Supreme Court got this one right. And hopefully this helps out the Washington Redskins with what they're fighting. Even though they're kind of going about it, I believe, a different kind of trying to attack it a different way. But, man, this is a big win. Let me highlight something that that the founder of the Slants, the Slants. This is what he said right after the ruling, right after the ruling came out. He wrote on their Facebook page, after an excruciating legal battle that has spanned nearly 8 years, we're beyond humbled and thrilled to have won this case at the Supreme Court. This journey has always been much bigger than our band. It's been about the rights of all marginalized communities to determine what's best for ourselves. Okay. Let's take this a step further and let's look at it with relation to the Redskins. Now, the Redskins was a whole trademark issue. Trademark, I mean, they... it was a trademark issue, and they canceled their registration back in 2014 after years. How many years were they using this trademark? Anyway, Redskins attorney Lisa Blatt said in a statement, "The team is thrilled with today's unanimous decision as it resolves the Redskins' long-standing dispute with the government. The Supreme Court vindicated the team's position that the First Amendment blocks the government from denying or canceling a trademark registration based on the government's opinion." Now, but Lisa Simpson, an intellectual property lawyer in New York, she says that it seems this decision will indeed open the floodgates to applications for all sorts of potentially offensive and hateful remarks. While this may be the right result under the First Amendment and the principles of free speech that are foundational to our country, it seems the responsibility will now pass to the public. Hot damn, yeah! That responsibility falls on us. It doesn't fall on the government to say, oh, well, I think Betty Sue down the street was going to get offended. Nope. Who cares? You don't like it? Don't look at it. I don't much care for football. I don't watch it. I don't follow it. I don't know the first thing about it. I really don't. I mean, and this, again, this goes back to something that has opened a door for us, and that is to be able to jump in and explain in a little more depth about some founding documents, the Constitution. I mean, we've been talking about the Declaration of Independence for how long? We've been talking about the people that signed it, what they did, what they gave up. We're going to cover another one here shortly. But we need to understand this stuff. We have to be able to go out and talk. You can't just get your little smartphone and go blast somebody on Twitter because they said something offensive or they called you a name, and then you immediately start attacking them back. You're giving them exactly what they want. You have to attack them with facts. Facts don't have feelings. That's a quote from Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro says that all the time. Facts don't have feelings. And he's right, 100% right. It's just, I'm thankful that one came out right. SCOTUS got one right. Thumbs up for that one. Okay. Now, unfortunately, government sometimes, most of the time, gets stuff wrong. What am I talking about here? Be glad you don't live in Oregon, and if you live in Oregon, well, I'm sorry. Just better hope that you don't get dementia or Alzheimer's. Because the state says it's okay that they can kill you. Wait, what? Yes. What am I talking about? In Oregon, there's a Senate bill, SB 494, that allows the starvation and dehydration of dementia and mentally ill patients against their will. They passed this 17-13 back on June 8th. This bill would remove safeguards in Oregon law that protect the right of patients to receive food and water as part of basic treatment. It would give healthcare representatives power to potentially coerce doctors into starving patients against their will. First off, we need to understand where all this came from, because they didn't just dream this up. Maybe they did. Maybe they're dreamers. Dream. Okay. So what started all of this? SB 494 was introduced after a dispute between the husband of an Alzheimer's patient and her nursing home. The patient had filled out an advance directive saying she didn't want to be fed intravenously. Okay? Does not want to be fed intravenously. She began needing help using utensils. She could still eat with her hands and was still expressing a desire to eat. Her husband filed a lawsuit to get her nursing home to stop feeding her. Which, I'm blown away. Seriously? Dude, grow a set. The nursing home, we'll keep names out of this, said it would not force her to eat, but that it only wanted to continue providing her the option of basic food and water, which I believe they're trying to do. You put it in front of her, she tries. Give her some damn help. Well, he lost. So, and the family maintains that their mother would want to be starved and dehydrated rather than live in such a state. I don't quite think so. I doubt that the family wants to watch her starve to death, whether it's from dehydration or from food. I'm sorry, this story really gets to me. It is. That's exactly what this is. This is inhumane, and this borderlines the entire argument of death panels back when we were discussing Obamacare. Well, obviously it got some reaction. Let's see. The executive director of Oregon Right to Life, Gail Atterbury, told LifeSite News in an email, quote, "In spite of amendments, SB 494 remains a deadly bill. It's a tragedy that the liberal senators believed the talking points of the big insurance companies and right-to-die proponents about this bill." Now, taking it a little further, Oregon Right to Life explains, "The current form gives ample room for a person to write his or her complete instructions for end-of-life care, including if the patient wants tube feeding or not. The law also limits the authority of a healthcare representative to make decisions for a patient to only what the patient designates on the form." SB 494 removes the advance directive document from established Oregon statute, meaning, quote, "There could be situations where an incompetent person's life may be ended according to the wishes of their healthcare representative, even if it's against the unwritten or ambiguously written desires of the incompetent person." The bill, quote, "opens a door to a whole new classification of people who can be legally killed." Now, let me point something out. Oregon was the first state to legalize assisted suicide in 1997. Maybe that's why these people moved to Oregon. Who knows? Don't know the entire backstory. But this is absolutely ridiculous. The people that wrote this bill have no heart at all. They've obviously never watched a loved one wither away. Some people need the Holy Spirit to slap the living crap out of them. Okay. Says that it opens the door to killing conscious, non-dying adults incapacitated because of mental illness. Well, I mean, listen, you guys have watched the show long enough. I'm mentally ill. Who have not asked to be killed. Please don't kill me, okay? I had a root beer float earlier. I want to enjoy it for a little bit. The clear motive for the killing is money. A first grader can do the math as to how much money it saves to kill a person rather than allow him to live. John, that's not that bad of a way to go. Death by deep-fried moon pies. I don't know if I'd want them deep-fried. I mean, I could go for some moon pies, and as a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to ask the missus, because, you know, right over there, to go get those bite-sized moon pies that we got. No, I don't want you to go grab them. I already had a root beer float. Anyway. Okay, so the heart of the matter is this. And this comes from a pro-life group who warns that, quote, instead of a person having to opt out of life-sustaining treatment on an advance directive, Oregonians will likely need to specifically opt in to ensure that their healthcare representative does not end their life. I have, no, I don't have the emotional energy to take it that way. I really don't. That is an inhumane way to go about helping anyone. Inhumane by any way. I don't care who you are. If you support this, you are a heartless bastard. That is it. I'm not going to hold punches on that one. You are a POS if you support SB 494 in Oregon. And if you try and bring that crap into my state, oh hell no, we're going to go down. John, I don't know. That's a good question. Is welfare considered life-sustaining treatment? For some, hell, for some of these people, those who are living on welfare, they eat better than I do. Freaking ridiculous. I mean, I've seen some of their receipts. It's crazy. John also says life has no meaning to progressives, unborn and the terminally ill. That's true. Only the strong survive. Only the strong survive. We could take that in a totally different direction, but I don't think we need to. You know what we do need to do? What's our time? We got 9 minutes. Here's what we need to do. Tell you what, that's what we're gonna do. La la la. Yes. It does kind of sound like the Third Reich. Hey, if you're not strong enough to fight, well, you're weak enough to die, so you hop on the train and go on over there. Okay. I tell you what. Here's what we need to do. After the show, we need to get a conversation going over on our Slack channel. And if you're new to the show and you need an invitation to our Slack channel, please reach out to me however you want. I'll send you an invitation, because, you know, Slack, over on our Slack channel, we're Again, we're trying to build this community over there where we can talk about things way, way deeper than we can in a chat room or here on the show or on Facebook or Twitter. Those things are okay. It's good for, short bursts of dialogue. But when we really want to get down into things, that's where I want to see things happen. It's way more private, way more individual, and way cleaner. There's no hate over there in our Slack channel. Okay, but tell you what, it's that time. Profiles in history. It was Monday night, March 5th, 1770, and standing watch over Boston was a group of British soldiers and their captain, Thomas Preston. They were sent to the colonies in the hopes to quell unrest over a set of taxes. Taxes on paper, taxes on glass, and, most famously, taxes on tea. The colonists didn't like them being there, and often taunted them. However, on this night, one of the soldiers snapped, firing into the crowd. By the time the guns were quiet, 5 colonists lay dead. You and I know this event as the Boston Massacre. To one man, it would either make or break his career. Robert Treat Pine was born on March 11, 1731 in Boston, Massachusetts. At the age of 14, he entered Harvard, graduating 4 years later in 1749. After school, he tried teaching, but soon left the country for a bit of adventure. He traveled to the Carolinas, England, Spain, the Azores, and even worked as a whaler in Greenland. During the French and Indian War in 1755, he acted as chaplain for troops on an expedition to Crown Point, New York. But after that, he turned to the study and practice of law. Now, let's revisit why I told you about the Boston Massacre. When Preston and his troops faced trial, one of their prosecutors was, you guessed it, Payne. On paper, Payne and his colleagues appeared to have an open and shut case. The unpopular British soldiers lost their cool and they fired into the crowd. In fact, the public felt so strongly against the defendants that no attorney, except one, would even represent them. Who, you ask? Payne's former schoolmate and future rival, John Adams. This was his opportunity to make his mark, but he blew it. He was no match for Adams' quick tongue and keen logic. The defense lawyer argued that the crowd had provoked the soldiers, who had a legal duty to respond. The outcome was certainly regrettable, but the men had done their jobs. In the end, Preston and 6 of his 8 men were acquitted. 2 were convicted of manslaughter. They were not hanged, but rather branded, somewhat absurdly, on their thumbs in the shape of the letter M. It was also around this same time, just 10 days after the Boston Massacre, that he married Sally Cobb, and, well, together they would have 8 children. Adding it to their already long list of grievances against the crown, Bostonians despised the outcome, and although he lost the trial, Payne was regarded as a hero among patriots for his work. It was enough of a career boost that he earned a seat on the Massachusetts legislature, later serving as a delegate in the First and Second Continental Congresses. During debates, his fellow congressmen found him to be rather amiable and jocular, but he seldom ever proposed new or original ideas. During the Second Continental Congress in 76, Benjamin Rush said Payne, quote, rarely proposed anything and opposed nearly everything anybody else proposed. It's said that he argued against so many proposals he was nicknamed the objection maker, probably because Major Payne or Payne in the, well, it was already taken to. Longer than any of the other Massachusetts delegates, Payne maintained a desire for reconciliation with Britain, even signing the Olive Branch Petition in an attempt to avoid the impending conflict. King George burned the petition, turning Payne's support for the Revolution and signing the Declaration of Independence. Payne remained influential in Congress and Massachusetts state affairs throughout his life. He became the state's first Attorney General from 1777 to 90, where Governor John Hancock appointed him to the Massachusetts Supreme Court. He served in this position until he resigned at the age of 73 because of the onset of deafness. What? That's right. He literally couldn't hear cases any longer. But on May 11th, 1814, Robert Treat Pine passed away. And that is this week's Profiles in History. Now, worthy of a note that, differences aside, John Adams wrote to Benjamin Rush, telling him of a visit with Paine, quote, "It would divert you to witness a conversation between my ancient friend and colleague, Robert T. Paine, and me. He is above 80. I cannot speak, and he cannot hear. Yet we converse." How about that? How about that? Okay? Here it is, you got a guy, John Adams, whose voice is pretty much gone in his later years. And, well, we all know how it worked out for Robert Paine. I mean, the dude couldn't hear anything. What? But they still talked about things. They still had conversations. They still tried to work things out. You know, you got one guy over on that side and another guy over here. And they still worked. They still worked together. We've lost that art. We've lost that art. And I've got a plan. Anyway, I do have an idea about something that I want to try. It's going to take a lot of courage and a lot of extra time to try and do. And if I can get the ball rolling, I will certainly share it with you guys. Because the idea is fascinating, and I think it's really, really what we need to try and work on. We've talked about this in the past where we have opposing views and, you know, trying to come together in the middle where that gray area is. That's where we gotta work towards. You know, just because the left's feelings are hurt doesn't mean we should stop what we're doing and go console them and say, "Oh, Jim Bob, I'm sorry. I take it back. You know, here's a cake. Oh, I can't bake you a cake as fast as I can because, well, you're gay and I don't agree with it, so yeah, you won't eat it." This is the world that we're living in. It really does. I feel like I want to scratch my skull open. And that sound says we're done. That's all we got. Boy, we did good on time. How about that? We did good. We did. That's great. We were right on track. And, you know, actually, we have to hurry up and wrap this up because right after us on KLRN radio is who? That's right, Rick Robinson. You guys got to stay tuned for him if you're listening live. If not, and you picked us up on one of our affiliates, well, stay tuned for one of their shows because you have got to stay armed with knowledge. And the only way you're going to do that is to watch and listen to shows just like this one. Look, you guys heard the sound. That's all the time we have for this week, and God willing, the Stafford Voice will be back next week. You can follow me on Twitter at Stafford Voice, or on Gab, that is, at Stafford Voice. Or you can look me up on Facebook, Instagram, wherever, looking for the Stafford Voice. Email your questions, comments, or concerns. Tag me in anything on social media. Again, my email address is thestaffordvoice@gmail.com. thestaffordvoice@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time, and until next week, thanks, and God bless.